I want you to visualize something for me. Close your eyes if you have to, unless you're driving, in which case, please, please keep them open. But picture a desk. It is an absolute mess.
Okay, I could do that. It sounds a lot like my desk on a Monday morning, to be honest.
Right. It's just covered in what looks like the remnants of three completely different lives, three totally separate obsessions.
So what are we looking at specifically? What's in these piles?
On the left, you've got this stack of academic papers, and they are dense. I mean, they're dry, heavily annotated lectures all about the neuroscience of consciousness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, how the brain actually works on a biological level, the real heavy academic stuff.
Got it. Okay. So pile number 1 is the scientist.
Exactly. Then on the far right, you have this massive, dog-eared, dusty encyclopedia of Star Trek alien species.
Of course.
I'm talking detailed schematics, cultural histories, theories on warp drive, the works, the full Trekkie experience.
Okay, so we've got a neuroscientist and a hardcore Trekkie in the same room. That's already a weird dinner party.
It is. But then, right in the middle, scattered over everything else, are these handwritten, chaotic, esoteric lyrics and manifestos from an Italian rock music project. It's called Radio-mannadoro.
Radio-mannadoro. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing they're not singing about love and cars.
Not even close. They're talking about Gnosticism, ancient prophecies, the nature of the demiurge, and, the end of the world.
That is a chaotic desk. It sounds less like a desk and more like the start of a conspiracy theory investigation board with the red string connecting everything.
It does, and that's the point. If you looked at these three piles separately, you'd say they have absolutely nothing in common. A neuroscientist, a sci-fi fan, and an Italian esoteric rocker walk into a bar. There's no punchline.
Right, there's no logical connection there.
But the mission of this deep dive is to prove that they are actually telling the exact same story.
Now, that is a very bold claim. You're saying a lecture on brain synapses connects to Spock and a Gnostic manifesto from Italy.
I am. Because when you start layering these things on top of each other, like transparent overlays, when you filter the neuroscience through the Gnostic lyrics, and then you look at that through the lens of sci-fi history, a picture emerges. And honestly, it's a terrifying picture.
Terrifying how?
It challenges the very tool we're using right now to have this conversation.
Which is?
Words.
Words. Language. The logos. The central question we're wrestling with today is heavy, and it might make you rethink every conversation you've ever had. And the question is this: what if language isn't the tool that makes us human? What if it's actually a prison?
A prison.
A prison. A trap, maybe even a virus.
Yeah.
What if the logos that we prize so highly as the hallmark of civilization is actually a corruption of reality?
And if it is, then what's the alternative?
That's the core of it. What if the only true reality, the only way to actually communicate and find peace is through frequency and vibration?
It sounds like we are about to seriously question the fabric of reality itself. We are. We're going to look at the Jiang theory, which claims your brain isn't a hard drive, it's an antenna. We're going to decode the Radio-mannadoro texts that claim the creator of this world is a liar who trapped us all in syntax.
And we're going to use the history of the United Federation of Planets to prove that words, well, they inevitably lead to war, while music and vibration, they lead to peace.
Exactly. So strap in. We aren't just reading sources today. We're trying to break the code.
All right. Where do we begin?
Let's start with the hardware, the biology of it all. We have this lecture from a Professor Jiang regarding his Jiang theory of consciousness, and I think this is the absolute perfect place to start because it breaks our default assumption about how we even think.
Right. Because if I ask you, or anyone listening, what is your brain? What's the immediate analogy that comes to mind?
Oh, a computer, 100%. Specifically a hard drive. I have memories, those are files. I have a personality, that's my operating system, maybe Windows 95 on a bad day.
Right. I learn a new fact, I save it to the disk. That's the model we all use, almost without thinking about it.
It's the standard materialist view. We think of the brain as a container. We assume that everything that makes you you, your childhood memories, your love for coffee, your fear of spiders, is physically stored inside the wetware of your skull.
Exactly. But Professor Jiang argues that this is fundamentally wrong. He suggests we need to make a massive shift in perspective.
He argues the brain is not a storage facility, it is an antenna.
An antenna. Okay, let's unpack that, because that implies the signal isn't coming from inside the house.
Precisely. The best modern analogy, which he kind of touches on, is the cloud. Think about it. If you're using your laptop to access the internet, to stream a movie or check your email. The internet isn't inside the aluminum case of the laptop.
Right, the laptop is just a receiver. It's a mechanism for tuning into the signal that's already out there.
Exactly. And if I smash my laptop with a hammer, which I've been tempted to do,
We've all been there.
I haven't destroyed the internet. I haven't destroyed the movie I was watching. I've just broken the receiver.
And Jiang argues consciousness works the same way. He posits that consciousness exists outside of us. It's in the universe, in infinite dimensions, a universal field, and our brains simply tune in to specific frequencies of that field.
So you're not generating your thoughts, you're receiving them.
That is a lot to process. It makes you feel a little less solid, doesn't it? Like you're less of a concrete thing and more of a radio station.
It really does. But he uses a really specific, almost poetic example from Yale literary criticism to back this up. He talks about the concept of the great book.
Yes, I remember this part. He references a famous Yale critic who defined a great book not just as a well-written story, but as something that helps us become human.
And the specific mechanism for that, according to Jiang, is the ability to hear yourself speak.
Which sounds so simple on the surface. I hear myself speak. But it's actually really trippy when you stop and analyze what's happening in that moment.
Right. Jiang says that to be conscious, to be truly human, it requires a kind of disassociation.
Think about what happens when you have a conversation. As I'm speaking to you right now, there's a part of me that is forming the words and talking. But there's another part of me, he calls it a ghost version of me, that has stepped back and is observing the scene.
You're watching yourself talk.
I'm analyzing what I say as I say it. I'm imagining what you're thinking about what I'm saying. It's like I'm both the actor on a stage and the audience member watching the play.
It's a feedback loop.
Exactly. And that ghost, that observer, that is the antenna tuning in. It's an act of imagination. Jiang points out that we are composed of two selves, the biological body, which is the hardware, the receiver, and the consciousness, which comes from our interaction with that universal field.
Okay, so if the brain is just receiving the signal, what happens to something like memory? Because I definitely feel like I have memories. I can close my eyes right now and see my childhood home. Is that not on the hard drive?
This is where it gets really interesting, and it moves away from the simple data storage idea. Jiang says our experiences aren't stored as cold data. If they were, we'd recall them perfectly every time, like opening a PDF file.
But we don't, not at all. Our memories change, they fade, they morph over time.
Right. Jiang argues that we filter experiences into emotions. He calls it indexing. We don't store the raw video file of an event. We store the emotional index of that event.
We index experiences by their emotional strength.
Precisely.
That's why I can remember a moment of intense embarrassment from 3rd grade with perfect clarity, but I have no idea what I had for lunch last Tuesday. The emotional tag is gone.
Exactly. And that combination of emotions, that unique index, creates a unique imprint in the universe. But since the universe is infinite, those imprints can be shared. And this is the bridge to his concept of archetypes.
This was the part of the lecture that really blew my mind. He brings up Homer, the Iliad, one of the oldest, most foundational stories we have.
Right. And our default assumption is, wow, Homer was a creative genius. He invented the character of Achilles from scratch.
But Jiang says no, Homer didn't invent anything.
Homer was just a better antenna.
Yes. He tuned his receiver to a very specific, very powerful frequency. He opened his mind to the universal consciousness so wide that he was able to access an eternal archetype that was already there.
So Achilles isn't a character in a book.
Achilles is a frequency. He's a pattern of personality, of rage, of pride, of glory, of grief that exists in the cloud of the universe, and it has always existed. Homer just downloaded him.
And that's why someone, in a completely different culture, thousands of years later, can read the Iliad and feel like they are Achilles. Or why I can watch a movie and cry for a character I've never met.
You're not just empathizing. Your antenna is tuning into the same frequency that character represents.
Precisely. The universe is timeless and spaceless. The consciousness is everywhere. It's why we see the same stories, the same myths, pop up in cultures that never had any contact with each other. They're all tuning into the same broadcast.
And this leads Jiang to redefine a word that we usually associate with magic or religion: prophet.
Yeah, this is a crucial bridge in our sources, especially for where we're going next. We tend to think of a prophet as a fortune teller, right?
Yeah.
Someone with a crystal ball saying, in the year 2026, the stock market will do this.
A parlor trick.
Exactly. But Jiang says that's not it at all.
No. A prophet is someone who speaks the truth of the universe, the fundamental laws. And because the universe is timeless, past, present, and future all existing at once, speaking the truth inevitably looks like predicting the future to us, trapped in linear time.
The example he gives is a moral truth, a universal law. If you do evil, evil comes to you. That's not a prediction based on, data analysis. It's a statement of how the machinery of the universe works. It's like saying, if you drop this ball, it will fall.
It's cause and effect. It's a circuit. It's resonance.
Let's go back to Achilles. He sacrifices Patroclus, indirectly to his pride. He refuses to fight. His best friend dies wearing his armor. He allows evil, or at least negligence, and so evil must come to him. It's not magic. It's a law of the universe, like gravity.
The prophet just sees the waveform. They see the pattern and the noise where the rest of us just see chaos.
Okay, so let's hold this thought right here. Our brains are antennas. We are supposed to be tuning into this universal truth, this music of the cosmos. If that's the case, why is the world such a mess?
Yeah, why is there so much noise? Why do we misunderstand each other constantly if we're all capable of tuning into the same station?
That is the perfect question. And to answer it, we have to switch sources. We have to pick up those chaotic handwritten lyrics from the middle of the desk.
The Radio-mannadoro texts. Because if Jiang says the brain is an antenna, these Gnostic texts are telling us that the signal has been jammed.
And not just jammed, it's been hacked, corrupted at the source.
This is where we get into the Radio-mannadoro thesis. These are, like we said, lyrics, blog posts, just esoteric writings from an Italian artist. And the core claim is incredibly bold. Beyond logic, before logos comes frequency.
Okay, this is deep Gnosticism. To really get our heads around this, we need to quickly explain the cosmology here because it's very different from the Sunday school version of creation that most people in the West are familiar with.
Right. In this worldview, at the very top, there is the monad.
The monad is the true source, the original pure frequency. The text uses a Pink Floyd reference, calling it the atom heart mother.
It's perfection. It's pure music. It's the unity of all things before they were fractured.
But then there's the demiurge.
And who is the demiurge?
The demiurge is the false creator, the craftsman. In Gnostic tradition, this is the entity that built the physical world we see, this flawed, broken world full of suffering. He is a lesser god who thinks he is the only god.
And the Radio-mannadoro text presents a specific crime of this demiurge. This is where it gets wild.
The text says, the demiurge took the pure music, the pure frequency of the monad, and he breathed a surrogate into Adam. A lie.
And that lie is the logos, the word.
This is a complete inversion of how we usually think. In the beginning was the word, right? That's the famous opening of the Gospel of John. But these sources are arguing, no, in the beginning was the music. The word was the virus. It was the trap.
The text explicitly calls words prisons. That's a recurring phrase in the source material. Words are prisons, but why? Why is a word a prison?
Well, think about it. When I say the word tree, what happens in your mind?
I picture a tree.
Right, but you picture a generic concept. You don't see the infinite complexity of a specific living, breathing organism with the wind in its leaves and the roots in the ground. I've created a mental box. I've reduced the reality of the thing to a small phonetic sound.
You've trapped the reality in a label.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
moment I label it, I stop seeing it. I just see the label.
So the logos separates us from reality. It puts a static filter between our antenna and the pure signal of the monad.
Precisely. And the text reinterprets the entire Garden of Eden story through this lens. In this version, the serpent isn't the villain.
No. In this Gnostic reading, the demiurge creates this false paradise and forbids knowledge, forbids the fruit. The serpent is the unmasker. The serpent is trying to show Adam and Eve the lie. He's trying to break the prison of the logos so they can see the reality of the frequency.
And because the serpent unmasked the lie, the system had to be patched.
Patched, like a software update.
Yes. This brings us to the Tower of Babel. Usually we're taught that Babel was humanity being arrogant, trying to build a tower to God, so God scattered them by confusing their languages as a punishment.
But the Radio-mannadoro source flips that too.
It argues that Babel was a deliberate sophistication, a software patch. Humanity was maybe getting too close to understanding the code again. They were unifying, perhaps through a higher frequency. So the control system, the demiurge, fragmented language.
It wasn't a punishment for hubris. It was a tactic for control.
Let's confuse their tongues. It was a tactic to keep us divided, to keep us trapped in syntax and grammar so we wouldn't feel the underlying vibration. If we can't understand each other's words, we certainly can't harmonize our frequencies. We just spend all our time arguing over definitions instead of connecting.
And the source suggests this trap, this prison of words, creates a cyclical time. We're stuck in a loop. It references the Kali Yuga, which is the Hindu age of darkness and conflict. It even talks about matrix glitches.
Yeah, and there's a really cool detail in the source about the artist's own music. Radio-mannadoro claims that their old analog recording stuff written years and years ago actually captured future events through quantum entanglement and superposition. The idea is that because true reality is frequency, and frequency transcends linear time, just like Jiang said about a prophet, the music was vibrating with the future before the future happened.
So the artist says, I knew before knowing. They were capturing the signal before the timeline caught up.
But the signal is getting harder and harder to hear because we are obsessed with words. We think if we can just explain things better, if we can just write a better treaty or draft a better email, we'll solve all our problems.
And that brings us to the most unexpected source in our stack.
The United Federation of Planets.
I love this transition. We are going to use Star Trek to prove a Gnostic theological point. We have a lecture from Gresham College titled Aliens in Science Fiction, and of course that massive wiki dump of species. And when you look at them through this lens, logos versus frequency, it clicks into place perfectly.
It really does. The Gresham lecture sets the stage. It talks about how Star Trek was meant to be this liberal utopia, trying to show that we could all get along if we just talked to each other. But the Radio-mannadoro theory suggests a fatal flaw in the Federation's whole philosophy. Whenever the Federation relies on words or diplomacy on logos, they get conflict. When they switch to frequency, they get peace.
Okay, let's look at case study number 1, the Horta. This is from the classic original series episode, The Devil in the Dark.
A classic. So the setup is you have a mining colony on the planet Janus VI. The miners keep finding these weird silicon spheres that just look like rocks to them.
So there's just obstacles, geological oddities. They start smashing them to get them out of the way.
And suddenly this creature appears, the Horta. It looks like a moving blob of molten rock, or as some fans affectionately say, a giant angry meat pizza, and it starts killing the miners with a powerful acid.
Now, look at the communication gap here. The miners are using logic. Their logic says, this is a monster, it is killing us, we must kill it. They are using words, monster, killer, enemy.
Words are prisons. They trapped the Horta in the monster category. They couldn't see it as anything else because they didn't have a word for it. It was an other.
Exactly. And phasers didn't work, diplomacy didn't work because, the Horta can't speak English. It's a rock that moves. So how did Spock solve the crisis?
He didn't use words. He used the Vulcan mind meld.
Which is what, really?
It's a frequency link. My mind to your mind. It's pure telepathy. It's direct vibrational resonance. He tuned his antenna to the Horta's antenna.
He bypassed the logos entirely. He bypassed the translator, bypassed the debate, and went straight to the consciousness frequency. And what did he learn when he connected?
The first thing he feels is this overwhelming pain. And then the words come through his own mouth. No kill a lie. He felt its agony. He realized the silicon spheres were its eggs. The miners were murdering the Horta's children.
And the quote from Gene Roddenberry in the source is beautiful. He said that once Spock connected, it wasn't just a monster, it was someone.
That realization, that complete flip in perspective only came through frequency. Words caused the war. Resonance brought the peace. If Spock had just tried to write a treaty or negotiate, everyone on that planet would be dead.
Okay, let's go to case study 2. This is maybe the most famous one, the Tamarians. Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra.
Ah, yes. This is the ultimate proof of the failure of the universal translator. Now, think about what the universal translator is. It's a machine of logos. It takes syntax and turns it into other syntax. It assumes that if you just swap the word hello for bonjour, you have achieved communication.
But with the Tamarians, it failed completely. Captain Picard could hear the individual words Darmok and island and ocean, but he had absolutely no idea what they meant. Because the Tamarians speak entirely in metaphor.
Chaka, when the walls fell.
Right. It's an allusion to a shared cultural memory, a shared feeling. You cannot understand a Tamarian by reading a dictionary of their words. You have to have lived their history. You have to feel their tragedies and their triumphs.
The captain of the Tamarians, Dathon, he realizes this, and he essentially sacrifices himself to force Picard to understand. He realizes they can't negotiate a treaty across a table with words.
No. They have to share a trauma. They have to fight a beast together on the planet's surface.
Picard and Dathon at Eladril. They had to create a new frequency together, a shared experience. The Logos machine was useless. Only shared experience, vibration, action, feeling could bridge that gap. Picard had to stop analyzing the grammar and start feeling the story.
And then we have the tragic one. This one comes from the Deep Wiki Dive, the Vow and a Cat. This one really depressed me when I read it.
It is heartbreaking. The Vow and a Cat were a species in the Delta Quadrant. They were total isolationists. They genuinely believed they were alone in the universe. They were safe in their silence in their own little bubble.
And then one day, a Federation ship shows up, a Prometheus-class vessel, according to the logs.
And the Federation did what they always do. They hailed them. They opened a communications channel. They used words. We come in peace. Join our great Federation of planets, Logos.
And what happened?
It destroyed their entire society. The arrival of the word from the outside world shattered their worldview. It created an ideological split. One faction wanted to join this new galactic community. The other wanted to stay isolated and preserve their culture.
They went to war with each other, a civil war that nearly extinguished the entire species.
The Federation didn't fire a single phaser. They just fired words. And those words acted like a virus in the Vanakat collective consciousness. It polarized them, turned them against each other.
And this aligns perfectly with the Radio-mannadoro text we've been looking at. The word is war.
It's a direct parallel. So if words are war, then music or frequency must be the solution, right?
And we found a literal, almost unbelievable example of this in Star Trek. Strange New Worlds, the species known as the Pastori.
The Pastori. They're these monastic shepherds who protect an ancient artifact called Mahanit. But Mahanit isn't a statue or a tablet, it's a comet. A living, traveling comet that moves through star systems.
And when Uhura, the ship's linguistics genius, tries to communicate with it using logos, using math, syntax, the universal translator, it doesn't work. The comet completely ignores the math.
But the comet sings. It emits a frequency, a melody.
It hums. It vibrates.
And the source tells us, and this is the crucial part, one can only communicate with the artifact through music. Uhura has to sing to it. She has to find the right harmony.
This is almost a direct quote from the Radio-mannadoro text. Music is a language yet to be deciphered. Don't speak, sing like birds.
It's incredible. And when Uhura sings, the comet responds. It opens up. It reveals its secrets and provides life-giving water to a barren planet below.
Meanwhile, the Federation's Logos approach, trying to blow up the comet or redirect it with physics, was about to cause a total disaster. The frequency, the song, brought life.
We see this pattern again and again. Take Gom2, the Tin Man. It's a living spaceship, ancient and lonely. It was suicidal. It didn't need a Captain Kirk barking orders at it. It needed a listener.
It needed Tam Elbrin, a betazoid, a telepath who couldn't shut out the noise of the universe. His antenna was too sensitive, but he was the only one who could commune with Gom2. He didn't talk to the ship. He resonated with it.
It seems like Star Trek, whether it intended to or not, is constantly telling us that the lower forms of communication are speech and writing, and the higher forms are telepathy, empathy, music, pure frequency.
Which brings us back to the present day, to our world. If we accept this premise that we are trapped in a logo system, a system of words, laws, bureaucracies, and endless arguments, what does that mean for us spiritually?
Well, the Radio-mannadoro source goes into some very controversial territory here regarding the history of religion.
Yeah, and we need to be really clear here. We are just reporting what the source says. We're not endorsing it, just analyzing it. But it frames the history of the Christian church as a spiritual hijacking.
Correct. The Radio-mannadoro text argues that Jesus was a Gnostic figure, a being of light sent from the monad to show us the way out of the prison. The text uses the term Lucifer here, but it's crucial to clarify. It's using the original Latin definition, light bearer.
Right. The source explicitly distinguishes between Satan and Lucifer. It says Satan is the accuser, the opposer, a legitimate part of the demiurge's system. He's the prosecutor in the demiurge's flawed court.
But the Luciferian impulse in this Gnostic text is the rebellion against the demiurge's false reality, is the impulse to break the prison, to bring the light of truth.
And the text argues that this Gnostic mission to reveal the frequency and break the logos was hijacked. It claims that Peter turned it into a business, an institution, and that Paul adapted it for the Roman Empire.
There's a quote in there, Roman imperialism, third decline. It argues that the institutional church took the pure light, the pure frequency, and wrapped it back up in words, dogmas, rules, structures, effectively trapping the message back inside the very prison it was meant to destroy.
It's a powerful critique of institutions in general. It seems to argue that once you institutionalize a truth, you kill it. You turn frequency into logos. And once it is logos, it can be used as a weapon.
And the source gets really specific and angry about the modern world. It says we are living in a society based on violence and prevarication, on lies. It literally yells, "Stop the signal."
That's the desperate plea, isn't it? Stop resonating with these low frequencies. The source argues that we are constantly being bombarded with nonsense words that are designed purely to divide us. It even makes a sharp critique of the American context, saying the Second Amendment was written for the people, but it's been completely wasted or misunderstood.
Yeah, it's very angry. There's a track mentioned called Angry Liar. It feels like the artist is screaming at humanity for playing a rigged game, for playing into the hand of the demiurge.
Playing into the polarizing arguments. I mean, the Gnostic view here is that if you are fighting over words, you have already lost. If you're debating the syntax of a law or the wording of a tweet, you are in the prison. You're just rattling the bars.
So how do we get out? What is the methodology of escape, according to these sources?
The sources point to Adam Hart Mother.
A Pink Floyd album?
Well, yes, but it's used as a code here. Mother of the heart of the atom. It means returning to the source, to the monad. And the methodology is to bypass the intellect completely.
So don't try to think your way out of the prison.
No, because your thoughts are made of words, and the words are the bars of the cell. You have to vibrate your way out.
Use music. Use resonance. Use what the text calls quantum entanglement, which is really just a scientific-sounding word for a connection that exists without physical separation. The text says, "You who possess a soul, do not sell it."
And interestingly, it implies that not everyone has one. It uses the Gnostic term, hilix, which is terminology for people who are purely material, purely biological, with no spark of the monad, no antenna.
That's a harsh worldview. It says, the others can sell what they don't have. They will pay with their infected blood. It suggests a kind of spiritual separation is happening. The antenna people need to tune into the high frequency, and the hard drive people, the helix, are going to get wiped by the corrupted system.
And it's heavy. Incredibly heavy.
It is. But it connects everything we've talked about. If the brain is an antenna, like Jiang says, and the signal is being jammed by the lie of logos, as Radio-mannadoro argues, and we see in our fiction that words consistently lead to war, like in Star Trek, then the only logical conclusion is that we need to change the channel.
We need to stop reading the transcript and start listening to the melody.
Precisely.
So we've covered the brain, the aliens, the Gnostic conspiracy. We've gone from deep space to deep philosophy. I want to try to synthesize all of this. We need to land this plane. What is the final, indisputable verdict here, according to the sources?
If we take the Radio-mannadoro text as our final guide, the conclusion is mandatory. It presents what it calls an indisputable truth that completely flips our understanding of history and language on its head. And I think this is really the red pill moment of this whole deep dive.
Okay, let's unpack this final truth. Lay it on me.
We have to conclude with this truth. The logos comes after the frequency.
After. But we always think the word creates the world. Let there be light.
No, that's the lie. The text argues that the word itself is made of frequency. Think about phonetics. The sounds we make when we speak, I-E, oh, these are just musical constructs. They are vibrations produced by our bodies.
The language is just bad music, or a limited kind of music.
In a way, yes. According to this worldview, the demiurge took the music, the pure infinite frequency of the monad, and he breathed a surrogate into Adam. He created a cheap cover version, a bad cover version. And that surrogate is the lie of logos.
The lie that a label can contain reality.
Correct. And remember the serpent. The serpent unmasked this lie. The serpent showed Adam that the words were hollow, that the restrictions of the demiurge were fake. And because of that unmasking, the demiurge had to double down.
Double down how? What did he do?
He had to create sophistication. He had to confuse the issue even further to regain control. And that was the metaphor of the Tower of Babel.
The software patch. The update to the Matrix to introduce more bugs.
Exactly. The text says the demiurge never stops making mistakes. He keeps trying to patch his broken system with more words, more confusion, more division. He splits us into thousands of languages so we can't hear the original music that unites us.
And that brings us right up to the modern nonsense we see today. The text says modern words are literally nonsense.
They are. They're used by everyone in the most personal, self-referential way imaginable. We don't use words to communicate objective truth anymore. We use them to build our own little narratives. We use them as weapons against the other.
Functional only to their own narrative and used as a weapon. That sounds like every social media comment section, every political debate, every cable news segment I've ever seen.
It is. It's the weaponization of the lie. And the source makes the final, devastating declaration. The word is war. Frequency and music are peace.
And that peace, it's dangerous to the system.
Yes. And today, That peace is not convenient for systems that sustain themselves on war. Think about it. If we all actually tuned into the same frequency, if we all mind-melded like Spock or sang in harmony like with the Pastori, what would happen?
The systems of control, the economies of war, the political polarizations, the media machines that profit from outrage, they would all collapse.
They need the words. They need the arguments to keep the war going.
Wow. So the act of listening to music, of feeling resonance with another person, it isn't just a hobby. It's an act of spiritual rebellion.
It's the only escape from the prison.
Well, that gives me a whole new perspective on my Spotify playlist. It's not just entertainment anymore, it's a jailbreak kit.
It absolutely should be.
We've traveled from the neurons of the brain to the edge of the galaxy and all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And I think the advice from our source is the best way to sign off.
Sing like birds, fly high, and don't play a rigged game.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for diving deep with us. Keep your antenna tuned.
And stop the signal.
We'll see you next time.